Morning, everybody. I thought I'd take just a moment while I'm doing some tunes to go over some basics. So I get asked every single day, how bad did my last tune look from my last tuner? To be honest, 99% of the time I never look unless I have to for some reason. And I always ask for a stock file. So, a little background on my tuning experience. I started in like 94 when I got my driver's license, tuning carbureted cars on my 69 Camaro. Then about 97, I got a Camaro that had a TPIL 98, and we started, burning proms and tuning that, and then moved on to the LS stuff in 2002. Then moved into the LT world in 2015, and then been doing exclusively LT since 2016. I don't believe there's anybody who's tuned more 6 gens than I have at this point. I do 10, 15 a week, and I have for years. But what I want to cover is basically your three main fueling points. There's actually four: spark and the torque-based system. Now, like I said, I get asked how bad was my last tune. I'm not going to talk about anybody's tunes. I'm just going to talk about the way that I do tunes and how GM sets up this stuff. So, long story short, if you're a tuner and you think you're smarter than the GM engineers, you probably have an ego issue. If you are a tuner that really is smarter than the GM engineers, your problem is that, well, HPT just doesn't give you the keys to the city. They give you what you need. So, my philosophy is stick basically with what GM gave us and go on from there. So first, let's talk about volumetric efficiency table. Now it's called the virtual volumetric efficiency table. So if you get a tune and none of this is adjusted, to me, that's a problem, and it's lazy tuning. So all of this is your base fueling map, right? So anytime you touch the pedal, your map sensor sees vacuum change prior to your MAF sensor seeing airflow change. The MAF always trails the map. So this table is always the first lookup, no matter what. So that has to be adjusted to compensate for your mods. So remember VVE, then you have your power enrichment table, which is the one here in the middle, which a lot of people are under the thought process that this has to mimic targeted air fuel. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter. It's an adder. You could put 20 to 1, whatever you want in here. It doesn't really matter because you're going to correct that with your VVE table. So you could pick any arbitrary number you like, which is ironic because, so this is a Camaro file where if you look up here, this is your commanded stowage, right? It's 14.1 across the board because standard pump gas 93 has 10% ethanol in it at this point in the game. So they subtracted from 14.7 or 14.63, came up with 14.1 for 10% ethanol, and they ran it across the board because the Camaro stock doesn't have a flex fuel sensor. Now, the power enrichment table, if you follow along here on the power enrichment table, 1.175 is 12.5 AFR, and 1.180 is 12.3 AFR. So that means that GM, is targeting somewhat of a richer air fuel ratio, and then they built their VVE table, to subside that. So remember, VVE is your base, it's always there. Power enrichment and your MAF sensor are arbitrary numbers that get selected afterwards to match up to, whatever you want to target, I guess, or however you want to say that. So normally on pump gas, we shoot for 12.8, somewhere around there. And on E85, 12.9, 13.0, something like that. Now, let's talk about your MAF sensor. So your MAF sensor basically sits out front, and it has a lot of variations. So the problem is, for one, notice over here on the right, 8500, that's 8500 hertz. So basically a measurement of how much air is coming through your MAF sensor. The issue is any decent bolt-on car is going to surpass that number. So you're going to see over 8,500 hertz. Well, when your MAF sensor gets exceeded, it reverts back to your PE table. Now notice though, your PE table is only dictated by RPM. Your mass airflow frequency is dictated by hertz. So hertz change daily. So does the MAP sensor for your VVE table, depending on your atmospherics, a bunch of different stuff. So if I'm tuning a car in, let's say, New Mexico, it's going to be, down here in the 5,000 to 7,500 hertz. Where if I'm tuning a car at sea level or anywhere close to it, it's going to be 7,000 hertz to, roughly 9,000 hertz. Depending on some of our head cam cars, we'll see into the mid 9s, and my stroker motors see into the 10s. And that's with like a 4-inch tube. Now, anytime you change the size of the tube, you change how fast the MAF sensor or the airflow moves over the MAF sensor. So that leads to issues. Those are the things that have to be tuned. Now, mind you, like I said, this is a GM map that doesn't have flex fuel. Now, and I'm also just using stock tunes. Now, here's a stock flex fuel truck. Notice that the storage changes for alcohol content like it should. So as it goes down, it's saying, the more alcohol content, the more that we need to change the storage ratio. Now, if you look here, this is what a lot of people don't understand. You cannot command the same storage ratio for pump gas and ethanol. It will not work. So for your fuel trims to stay the same between alcohol and pump gas, that's what this table's for. This is what keeps your normal driving around stuff. Even with this compensating perfectly for your trims, your pump gas EQ for your power enrichment and your ethanol will not line up. Notice how much leaner ethanol is on your power enrichment. So up here we're at 1.3, which is 11.25. Do you think that GM is really commanding 11.25 air fuel ratio on a pump gas truck? I don't think so. Then it goes to 1.8, which is like, or 1.25, which is like 11.6 air fuel. Now, when it gets into the alcohol realm, it's commanding 1.188, which is 12.3, and 1.15, which is like 12.7. So basically what that's telling me is that even GM engineers knew that there was going to be somewhere around a full point difference between what you had to command for alcohol versus what you had to command for pump gas to make pump gas and alcohol at wide open maintain the same air fuel ratio. All right, so that's kind of the easy stuff, right? So just to recap, VVE is your base, MAF sensor trails VVE, power enrichment numbers are just arbitrary. You can set them to begin with at, let's say you wanted to target 12.8. So I would set, my PE table to whatever I want across the board, 12.8. Then I would go back after my VVE table until that matches up. And then I would bring in my MAF sensor table. However, the MAF has to be extended out past 8,500 hertz or you're going to run out of MAF. The other problem with just MAF tuning, and actually I'll get into that right now, and this is what you'll see a lot of tuners do, and I don't understand it. It's just lazy. But right here, you have your dynamic airflow table. Basically what I see a lot of people do is they just take this table and they scroll it down to like 800 for, and then about 600 right here. So basically what that does is that eliminates, they're trying to eliminate their VVE table because they don't want to go through and take the time to actually tune the VVE table and do it right. So what will happen is now they're just solely running off what this table right here tells them. The issue with that is that you'll reach the same MAF frequencies at different RPMs, different loads, and different throttle positions. So why would you limit yourself to, one of your 3 basic tables. There's a 4th table with a DI motor of injection timing, but I'm not even going to discuss that. So again, right now we're just talking about the basics. Now that basically covers fuel. We also have to remember that this is a torque-based system, which is totally different than all the LS prior to. And what I see is a lot of LS tuners applying LS stuff to an LT motor, which, just simply doesn't work. At least in my opinion and from what I've seen. So let's talk about spark real quick. So if you look here, this is the spark stuff. You've got high octane, low octane, you've got your, all of your adders, stuff like that. You've got your flex fuel adders, and their multipliers. You've got humidity, which is kind of baro based. You've got your IAT and its multipliers, ECT and its multipliers, EGR, your variable cam timing, launch, and your mean basic torque or whatever it's called. Then you have your minimum spark stuff. So what I see a lot of guys doing is, if you open this table up, notice how this doesn't say 22 degrees or 25 degrees or 28 degrees. So back in the LS days, starting with the LS1B and then the E40, the E67, and all the way up the chain, it was kind of more simplistic just to flatten this table out. When you do that, though, you're taking away all the vehicle's ability to adjust for all these other parameters. If GM didn't think they were necessary, I'm sure GM wouldn't have put them in there. And for me, as a remote tuner tuning cars all over the world, I have to basically utilize GM methodology to cover the widest range, of people, atmospherics, and loads and things like that. Now, with these cars, there's a thing called torque management spark. It's kind of just a pain in the ass. But one of the ways to somewhat defeat torque management spark is with your minimum spark timing. Now, minimum spark timing can be used for all sorts of stuff. You can use it to try and manipulate idle. You can use it to adjust kind of how much spark is available during shifts, things like that. All those things become critical and important as you're, trying to make a vehicle operate correctly and within the parameters of how the system operates. Especially when you're trying to leave like torque management in the transmission and things like that. So this is just kind of a quick overview. I'll never tell somebody, actually you can ask any of my, 500 or 600 customers at this point if I've ever made a comment on anybody else's tune. And like I said, most of the time I don't even look. However, if you go through your tune and look at all those tables I mentioned and see the things that I mentioned, you can kind of make your own judgments of what kind of tune you got. So, as you all know, Performance is the page. Check us out.